Welcome to Against the Stream. We meet Mondays and Wednesdays to practice Buddhist principles, meditation. And core part of the intention is to build community, to have some sangha, Buddhist word for community, to meditate together and connect and meet some other spiritual revolutionaries. Anybody else's mind start playing AC/DC when you hear the bells? Well, if it didn't already, it will now. First line is, I'm a rolling thunder, powering rain.
Coming on.
Like a hurricane. Sorry I missed last week. I was away on retreat. A lot of people in the room were with us in a week-long silent meditation retreat. Thank you, Casey, for substituting last week. And I believe you practiced appreciative joy in the series of the Brahmavihārās that we've been studying and practicing on Monday nights. Brahmavihāra means the wise aspects of our heart, the natural wisdom of the heart. And the first one is kindness or friendliness. We spent some time, I think we spent a couple weeks practicing what we call metta, loving kindness or unconditional friendliness. The second one is compassion. And we did a couple weeks on compassion, with some Tonglen practice, breathing in the suffering of our own experience and the suffering in the world, breathing out compassion. A couple weeks on compassion. Last week, appreciation, and maybe I'll do another week on appreciative joy. But tonight I want to open to the fourth aspect of the heart from this perspective, this teaching. Welcome. There's cushions. There's some chairs. Welcome. Which is equanimity. And so I'll talk a little bit about it before we meditate. Equanimity comes in the Brahmavihārās, comes in several different ways in the Buddhist teachings, but in the aspect of the heart practices, the kindness, the compassion, it's considered a balancing practice, a balancing quality. We spend a lot of time developing compassion and wishing for the end of suffering, wishing for well-being and ease in loving kindness. Developing an empathy, a well-wishing, training our mind and our heart to deeply care about our own pain as well as the pain of others, about our own suffering as well as the suffering of others. And equanimity is the reminder that no matter how much you care about somebody, no matter how perfect your compassion is, how unconditional your love is, you can't change anybody but yourself. All of the compassion in the world will not make somebody else care about themselves. We were at the retreat, and Soma, who's been in training with me and longtime member of our Sangha, gave a talk on equanimity, and she said it's Buddhist Al-Anon. It's that understanding that no matter how much you love someone who's suffering, you can't save them. You can support them, you can love them, you can encourage them, you can try to inspire them, you can give them all of the tools, set up the conditions for them to do their own internal work, and send them to rehab over and over. But you can't make them stop drinking the causes of suffering in their own life. You can't make anybody not suffer but yourself. When it comes to this Buddhist understanding of the causes of suffering are clinging. You can't let go for anybody but ourselves. We can let go. We can stop clinging. We can train, we can practice, we can develop the skill of non-attachment, but you can't do that for anyone else. Everyone has to develop that skill for themselves. We can be kind, we can be generous, we can be loving, caring. But we can't make anybody else be kind, generous, loving, and caring. And make is the core, the attachment, the control is the core issue. Because we do have influence, and that's how I like to think about equanimity. You're very influential, how you speak to people, how we show up in our lives, how we live, how we model something that does have influence over each other. I don't want to say complete powerlessness. I think actually human beings are pretty powerful. And our actions are powerful. And our example is powerful. But what we have is some influence, limited influence, not control. We can't control anybody. I mean, right? You can barely even control your own mind. You can't control your own mind. That's why we're all here. I mean, whenever you started meditating, whether it was last week or 50 years ago, if your mind obeyed you, you'd be done. You told your mind to stop being an asshole, and it said, "Oh, yes, ma'am. No more clinging over here. No more judgment, no more fear." Like this, the human condition is one of a setup for suffering, and it's really hard work to end our own suffering. And it's possible. This is the Buddhist promise, the third noble truth. Through your own efforts, through our own effort in this lifetime, we can get free. But we can't get anybody else free. And it's kind of if we have any attachment at all, which we all do, it's sort of heartbreaking because you love so deeply as a human being. Like I just had dinner with a whole bunch of friends and my kids. Like I always, this thing about, your children, you just love them so much and you just don't want them to suffer. And it's impossible. They have to suffer. Some friends who came in and I was playing Texas Hold'em poker with my 7-year-old son. And you could just see the addiction in his eyes. And he was just like, again, more. He's like, I won $36 from my dad. My dad sucks at poker. I was like, all right, double or nothing. Teach this kid a lesson. And then he fucking won. And he was like, you owe me $70. Sucker. Terrible father. People love to ask me for parenting advice. I was like, I don't know. Feed him candy. Let him swear. Teach him how to play poker. Love the shit out of him. Laugh a lot.
He'll be good at math.
He's very good at math. Yeah. He does math like that. The traditional equanimity meditation phrase that we use to develop the skill of non-attachment, to balance the skill of compassion, is kind of a little bit archaic, very Buddhist. It says, all beings are heirs to their own karma. Heirs as in inheritors of their own karma. Their happiness or unhappiness does not depend upon my wishes for them. Depends upon their own actions, their own karma. This Buddhist understanding that our actions are powerful, and that if we change our actions, we change our reality, we change our karma, karmic purification, karmic, developing wholesome attitudes in the heart and the mind, that we can do that, we can train our mind. Without meditation, the Buddha says, your mind is like a wild monkey. It's a monkey mind. It's untrained. It's undisciplined. It's all over the fucking place. And it's ruled by greed and hatred and delusion. Born into a human condition where craving and fucking double or nothing, one more time, Dad, is natural. That's just the status quo. More. I want more. I want to win. I don't want to lose. I want pleasure. I don't want pain. I want gain. I don't want loss. And it's impossible. We're born into a biological, evolutionary survival instinct that wants something that's impossible to have, which is for life to feel good all of the time and pain to not be so prevalent and unavoidable. The more we understand this, the more, for me, even just intellectually understanding the Four Noble Truths, seeing that it's not personal, that it's not your fault, that it's nobody's fault. Suffering is a given. We're born into an experience where we are going to suffer, and that this is true for all living beings. There's going to be some, and there's levels of it, but nobody escapes it. Some of us suffer more than others. But everybody has some suffering, that the cause of suffering is a repetitive craving. That again, not personal, not your fault. It's not a sin. It's not a lack of morals or ethics or anything else. Just born into a body that craves. A mind that obsesses, that clings, that not your fault. Third noble truth, it's possible to get free. Good news. But the third noble truth and the whole Eightfold Path is it's possible for you as an individual to get free through your own actions, through your meditation practice, through your renunciation, through your service, generosity. And that's true, so it's this universal normalizing teaching that's true for all of us, but it's only going to work for those of us that choose to apply it. And I'm sure many of you have people that you love deeply, have deep compassion for, children, partners, friends, parents. You have so much compassion for, but they aren't doing the work to free themselves from suffering. Is that true for you? Is that not true for you? Is anybody in here, everybody you know, practicing wisdom? It's true for all of us. We all have loved ones that are not practicing wisdom, that are suffering because of it. And this is where equanimity, and I love that the Buddha didn't just say compassion, didn't just say kindness, didn't just say appreciation, not just the positive emotions. He said your heart, for it to be fully liberated, has to be balanced by non-attachment. And that's the core of equanimity, non-clinging to the outcome of other people's experiences. You can't change them. Now, the danger in equanimity, and it's why compassion and equanimity need to be side by side, because the danger in equanimity is not caring. When you this wisdom that when you see, I can't actually save anybody else, you stop trying. Compassion says try, help, be of service. be compassionately engaged in the lives of people. Try to create a positive change on this planet. Be of service in all of the ways that you feel inspired to be of service. Help other addicts, help the environment, help people on the street, help animals, help. Compassionate, engaged, generous action. And understand that you can feed people, you can educate people, you can protect people on some level, or animals or the environment, but you can't get inside any, especially when it comes to humans. You can't get inside them and make them be compassionate for their own pain. This makes sense, right? So we'll do some of that meditation, but I also want to reflect a little bit on the other way that equanimity is encouraged. And that is understanding that in this life, even if you live in perfect integrity, whatever that means to you, very ethical, very kind, very generous. Even if you're a Buddha, and the Buddha is a good example, you will still experience what he refers to, or Buddhism refers to, as the 8 worldly winds, the vicissitudes of life. Perfect integrity, wisdom, compassion does not free one from the experience of pleasure and pain. You will still have the experience of pain. I don't know if you knew that. It's sort of like sometimes when we start meditating, we think, I'm going to meditate because I'm in so much pain. And if I meditate enough, I won't be in pain anymore. And I love that the Buddha disabuses us of that delusion from the beginning. He says, pain will continue. The beatings will continue. Unavoidable, unpleasant experience. Part of having a nervous system. You will experience pain. If you're fully enlightened, pain's no big deal anymore, right? Part of our goal is I want to get to the place where I just have compassion for all of the pain. I don't suffer about it anymore because there's a difference. There's pain, and then there's all of the resistance and judgment and fear of the pain that equals suffering. The more liberated we get, the less suffering we have about our pain. We just have pain. Also pleasure, bad news, unavoidable. You know the story about the Buddha doing years as an ascetic, trying to, which is like this extreme renunciation, trying to avoid all pleasant experiences and just torturing his body and mutilating his body, thinking that something about pleasure is the problem. If I can just avoid pleasure and just seek all of these painful experiences, then I'll be happy. And he says, no matter how long I fasted, no matter how deep the renunciation was, sometimes the sun would just hit my skin and it felt so good. Sometimes I'd be meditating and, he said towards the end of that practice, I was skeletal. I could put my hand into my abdomen and touch my spine. I just my body was almost dead. My skin was falling off. I would rub my hand over my arm and just hair and skin and just close to death. He said, but still that felt good. Still pleasant. Of course, we don't want to avoid pleasure. We just want a healthy relationship to pleasure. We just want to develop a non-attached appreciation and equanimity and understanding that no matter how pleasant it is, it's impermanent. It's not worth clinging to because clinging will ruin it. Non-attached appreciation. So pleasure and pain, gain and loss. If you play poker, as I do, You're going to lose. It's part of it. You're signing up for it. If you live a life, you're going to have loss. Everyone you know is going to die. Some before you, some after you, but all of us, we live in this loss plane of existence. There's the 5 daily reflections that many Buddhists do, where they reflect on the unavoidable nature of sickness, aging, death. Then the 4th is everything that I hold near and dear, I will lose. I will be separated from. Everything that I like, that I love, that I cling to will end in loss. This is the great reality. Loss is unavoidable. The 5th reflection there is our only true possession is our karma. The only thing you don't get to lose, the only thing that you actually own, that we actually own in this lifetime, how you've been acting. That's it. Only how you have been behaving. You own that shit. Everything else, loss. Praise and blame. You would kind of think that the Buddha, fully enlightened being, teaching people about compassion and kindness and generosity, discovered mindfulness, this radically transformative meditation technique and way to live. You would have thought like he would have got so much love, so much praise. And he did from some, but he did from the minority of people who came into contact with him. It was very well loved. You got to remember, Buddhism was a small cult in a Hindu society, in a Brahmanic, and didn't actually really take root in India until hundreds of years after the Buddha's death, when a vicious king who had murdered all of his enemies demanded that everyone become Buddhist or die. That's when Buddhism really caught on. You don't practice nonviolence, I'll kill your ass. It's a great way to keep power. Kill all your enemies and then practice, and then say, yeah, now we're going to be nonviolent. The Buddha was hated. He was attacked. He was lied about. There was assassination attempts on his life. He was criticized for his non-theistic approach to spiritual awakening, to saying you don't need the gods, you don't need a higher power, you don't need Shiva and Krishna and all of these archetypes. You have everything that you need inside of you to awaken. This was a radical teaching, and it was taking the power from the church. You don't need the church. You don't need the priests. You don't need the Brahmins to translate the Upanishads and the Vedas. You can just pay attention to your breath and body. So you can just develop kindness towards your own pain. This was such a radical thing. People were very threatened, the very power structure of society, when he empowered women and broke down the racist caste system and said this whole society is racist. And you've used karma to justify racism. And he spoke out against it. And he was hated, as radical politics often are, by those who benefit from oppression staying in place. Praise and blame, unavoidable. And so gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. I've gotten such a good equanimity opportunity these last couple of years it's been such great practice for me because I've gotten so much praise in my life as a teacher and an author and developing the communities against the stream and refuge recovery, the things that I've done with my life. And I got so much praise for so long, and then it just shifted. And then I've been getting so much criticism, so much blame, and went from fame to disrepute. And the Buddha said, this is going to happen. This is part of your practice. This is part of your life. Even if you don't have a big swing like I've experienced this year, to some people, they're going to love you and think that you're the best. And then there'll be other people that just hate you. Even if you have, and again, even with perfect integrity. I want to continue to believe that the Buddha was an awakened being with perfect integrity. But he was hated by people that didn't like his radical politics, that couldn't stand his empowerment of human beings, his empowerment of women, his empowerment of lower caste system people in that racist societal structure, constantly criticized. Certainly not trying to compare myself to the Buddha. I am no Buddha. But just trying to normalize that there's going to be these ups and downs. And equanimity is also these sort of, I like to think of it like waves. We're in Venice. There's a bunch of surfers in here. There's just going to be set after set. And some are going to be pleasant. And you're going to catch those waves and surf them. And sometimes you're just going to get pummeled, caught inside. And it's just part of existence. Praise and blame, gain and loss, fame and disrepute, pleasure and pain, part of the package. So if you have any ideas about if you get spiritual enough, you will only have pleasure, you'll only gain the shit you want and get to keep it. You'll only get praise. People, but for everybody will praise you and you know, positive attention. We just have to let go of that and know that loss, pain, being criticized is just part of life, unavoidable. And equanimity is taking it all in as an opportunity to say, okay, now it's like this. There is something about my mind, my ego, my nervous system that prefers the pleasure to the pain, but I need to learn to equally hold both of them. Compassion, a necessity. Non-attachment, a necessity. If we want to have ease, if we want to have well-being. So from the inside, and then in our relationship to others, love, compassion, empathy, but no ability to control anybody else. And not using that inability to control as an excuse to not try to serve, not try to help, not try to create the appropriate environment for people to thrive. Not do what traditional Indian society has done, and maybe Western society is doing in some ways too, which is justifying oppressive, racist, sexist norms by saying it's their karma. Terrible misuse of the understanding of karma. Anytime anybody is doing that, they are creating negative karma for themselves. It's more ignorance, it's more confusion. Do you have a sense of what I'm talking about for equanimity? Any questions about it before we meditate?
No. So you said empathy.
Yeah.
Which is Empathy is getting in
Mm-hmm.
to someone,
Feel it.
feeling it,
Yep.
feeling that person's pain.
Yep.
So empathy, does it fit with equanimity, or does it fit with love and kindness, or does it fit both? Or isn't there a danger in empathy as well, as getting too deep into someone else's shit and taking it on?
So it's more around compassion and empathy, I think. The Buddha's word karuna for compassion means to feel it in your heart, a movement, a quivering of your heart in response to pain, your own pain or someone else's. So it's empathy, it's feeling it. There is no danger in feeling pain, your pain or other people's pain, unless there's any clinging. The only danger in it, in feeling it, is if there's attachment to it going away. In real compassion, there's room for all of the pain in the world. And you're not overwhelmed by it because you have no need for it to go away. There's no clinging. It's just the ability to be with it as it is. It's an acceptance of this. There's so much pain in the world. There's also so much joy in the world and so much moments of ease and peace. So it's being able to touch reality. And it's actually not dangerous to touch reality when you've built that capacity.
Mm-hmm.
If we're, and none of us have actually built that capacity yet. So it feels dangerous, feels overwhelming, feels like we have to have boundaries with people's pain. But that's because we're attached to it being different than it is. The more we let go, the more we understand how impersonal it is, the more space we have for even the greatest depths of pain without a armoring or a defending against it. Because you just let it come through. It's like the Tonglen practice that we do, which is a Tibetan practice, but I incorporate it. I love it. It says, breathe in all of the pain. Feel it. Breathe out compassion towards all of it. Respond to the pain rather than react. Respond with compassion rather than reacting with aversion. This is the goal. And the more you practice, the more you get there. And of course, there's the humility in early, stages of practice, or even, down the path a bit, where you can't quite do it yet. And you get overwhelmed. And then you pull back. And then you approach it again. But the Buddhist path is encouraging us to feel it all. And to have equanimity for all of it.
Right. Sometimes, in the situation of empathy, it's often with the other kind of requesting empathy. And so there's a degree of a request for attachment to their shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you don't go that far, then you're not empathetic.
Yes.
If you pull back and dial back and suddenly get selfish.
Yeah. But non-attached compassion is not selfish. You of course, again, it's the blame.
Yeah. Right.
If you have perfect compassion but no attachment, people are going to say you're unfeeling. You say, no, I'm feeling it totally. I'm just not suffering about it. And if you're not suffering about it, they're not satisfied. If you really loved me, you'd be suffering. Like, no, my whole practice is to not suffer. I do really love you. And it's okay with me. And I care about you. And I wish you weren't suffering. But I understand that that's unavoidable. I can't do anything about that. It's not a lack of care. It's a lack of clinging. And of course, you'll be accused of not caring enough if you don't suffer with them. And maybe some of the Western definitions of compassion are actually suffering with. Is that a definition of compassion? To suffer with someone? The Buddhist, idea is not to suffer with, to feel it and to care about it. No need to suffer with them. Actually hold their pain, let them have it, and your job is just to care about it. Of course, these are very lofty teachings. Don't expect yourself to be able to do it perfectly, but keep trying. There's that story I heard a long time ago about somebody on the beach, a young person on the beach who, and there's just thousands and thousands and thousands of starfish that have washed up in a high tide. And they're all, and then the tide's gone out and they're there and they're drying out in the sun. And this young person is out there taking them one at a time and throwing them back into the ocean out of compassion, but with perfect equanimity. Just throwing them back. And then an old person, this is an ageist story about how young people are wise and old people are not. The old person comes along and says, what you're doing doesn't matter because you can't save them all. And the young person says, it matters to this one. And it matters to this one. And it matters to this one. And of course I can't save them all. Duh, Grandpa. But I'm going to keep trying anyways. I'm going to keep doing the service that I can do right here. Of course I can't save them all. Okay. Went on and on. Okay, establishing a appropriate posture for sitting meditation, whatever that feels like to you. Establishing ease in your body by releasing any unnecessary tension around your eyes. Letting the eyes be gently closed. Releasing any clenching in the jaw, tension in our shoulders, or hardness in the belly. Breathing in, feel the sensations that the breath creates. Breathing out, soften the belly, the chest, the shoulders, the face. As much as you can, let the body breathe all by itself. No need to control the breath. But receiving the rising and falling of each breath. Reflecting on all of the people that you love, that you care about, that you cherish, that you treasure. Dear friends, relatives, benefactors, teachers, those who have inspired and supported you. Your children, if you have children, your parents, your siblings, bringing as much appreciation, as much compassion, an attitude of caring, friendliness, especially to the people that are easy to care about. And acknowledge the ways that those who you care about experience suffering, hardship, stress and fear, heartbreak and loss, craving and aversion. Breathing in the suffering of our loved ones, allowing yourself to feel it, to empathize with their pains, their difficulties. Breathing out compassion. May I learn to respond with care and not clinging to your pain. Opening to the practice of equanimity. Your own heart and mind. Saying to your loved ones, reminding yourself, your happiness or unhappiness does not depend upon my wishes for you. I care about you, I love you. But I understand that you are creating your own reality, that you have your own karma. And that only you can change that karma and learn to respond more wisely to your own pain. Respond more wisely to pleasure. The traditional phrase, you are the heir to your own karma. Your happiness or unhappiness does not depend upon my wish for you, but upon your own actions. The motorcycle is always a good opportunity for equanimity. Practicing being at ease in your body just as it is. With the sound. bringing to mind one at a time each person that you care about. Saying these phrases in your own heart and mind over and over. Your happiness does not depend upon my wishes for you. You are the heir to your own karma. Perhaps the simple sentiment is, I love you, but I can't fix you. I can't save you. Wisdom reveals to us that happiness or unhappiness is not created by what's happening, but by how we are responding to what's happening. The Dharma teaches us to not be so reactive and to be more and more responsive. The wise response is compassion, but it is also non-attachment. Bringing the practice right here into the room, to the people sitting next to you, the people that you said hello to tonight, people in your immediate vicinity. Sending them some love, some appreciation, some compassion for the difficulties they are experiencing. We're all experiencing difficulties. This being human is difficult. Extending the meditative understanding. Your happiness or unhappiness does not depend upon my wishes for you, but rests on your own response to what's happening in your life. Meeting each other with the intention of equanimity, compassion, and non-clinging. When we don't care about each other, it's just indifference. When we do care about each other, it's equanimity. Allowing this attitude, the Buddha said, radiating equanimity in all directions to all beings in the north and south, east and west. Covering the whole planet with compassion for all of the pain, with appreciation for all of the joy. And with the wisdom of equanimity, all beings in existence are heirs to their own karma. How they are responding to what's happening. Karma means action, means response. How we are responding to what's happening in the world, in our lives. causes either suffering or ease. All beings are heirs to their own karma. Happiness or unhappiness depends upon our actions, not upon anybody else's wishes. May all beings in existence be met with kindness. May all beings find the willingness to do what needs to be done to experience ease. May all beings find the willingness, the support to meet their own pain with compassion, as well as the pain in the world, to meet their own pleasures and joys with non-attachment. Through their own actions, finding the happiness that they seek. And just coming back to you here, this moment, breath, body, sitting in the cushion or the chair. Reflecting on these 5 realities, 5 reflections. Saying to yourself, I am not exempt from aging. May I learn to be at ease with the process of aging. I am not exempt from illness and injury, disease. May I learn to be at ease with illness, with injury, with disease. I am not exempt from death, impermanence. My death or the death of others, my loved ones. May I learn to be at ease with death. I am not exempt from loss. I understand that all that I cherish is impermanent, will be lost. May I be at ease with loss. I am not exempt from karma. I understand that my only true possession is how I behave, how I respond to what's happening in my life and in this world. May I be at ease. In this world as it is. Taking a moment to just reflect on how your heart, mind responded to the phrases, what your inner experience was of setting these high intentions and creating these mind habits of wisdom. How much it resonates, how much resistance there is, what kind of questions it brings up. I said in the instruction, and I think that this is key, when we don't care about the other, it can just be indifference. It's not equanimity if you don't give a shit about somebody. Equanimity is the balancing quality to compassion, to caring. So we spend a lot of time on the Buddhist path. Mindfulness itself develops compassion. The more we turn towards our pain and the pain of others, the more we learn to care. So really the core equation here is compassion. And then what do we do with our compassion when we realize it won't end other people's suffering? Equanimity. Learning to be at ease with the suffering of this world. Not indifferent, not detached, connected, present, caring, non-clinging. Yeah, and most of you have seen my hand puppet show. Many of you have. Clinging. Stop behaving the way you're behaving. Controlling. Codependency. Idiot compassion. Heard a Tibetan teacher. I was listening to this teacher years ago, decades ago. First time I heard it, I loved it. He said there's real compassion, and then there's idiot compassion. Real compassion, no clinging. Idiot compassion, attached to an outcome. Not just caring, but trying to control. So there's clinging. And then there's detachment. And right, sometimes equanimity can sound like detach. And Al-Anon says that. Detach with love. Separate. I don't want to diss Al-Anon too hard. I like Al-Anon. It's cool. Detach with love sounds like a good idea. And it's just semantics. But what Buddhism says is non-attachment. Not separate yourself. Feel it. Stay present with it without trying to control it. Non-attachment is connection. Equanimity is connection, not separation. Now, of course, boundaries are good. So are you mad at me right now? You can practice forgiveness for me later. Detachment.
Yeah.
This is detachment.
You can
still connected. I just feel like maybe I shouldn't diss Al-Anon, but I feel like often detachment feels like this. I'm going to separate from because I can't handle feeling it.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to be able to handle it, especially if it's a loved one, right? And how do people stay married to people with one partner? There's people that stay married to active addicts, right?
Yes, so it's non-attachment.
It's just.
So I'm going to go back and have them edit the Al-Anon literature to non-attachment with love. It's just semantics. It's just semantics. But sometimes when you heard non-attachment, didn't you think it was this sort of detachment, which is this like separate yourself from? Where really, I just think it's an important in your meditation, in your life in Buddhism, non-attachment means connection. It doesn't mean avoidance.
Yeah, I think that's really key because for so long in my practice, when I would hear Buddhism is about not being attached, it felt like this nihilistic, separatist. I'm just on this path for myself, my own liberation. Fuck off with all the rest, So the idea of how you stay connected with somebody without manipulating the outcome or control, just all the other things. Just the idea of, from the Al-Anon perspective, the idea of to be detached always meant detached from in my own mind, detached from the outcome. That's what it meant for me when I would understand that literature. Yeah. Versus this whole Buddhist idea of non-attached.
Yeah.
Which I think you
also non-attached to the outcome. Same.
Right. And I think you explain it well, but I think it's definitely misunderstood.
It's mostly semantics. Yeah. Thanks, Jason. Please.
I really liked it. The equanimity practice. My favorite's always been loving kindness. But something about this felt so much more that it was really tough thinking of people who I really didn't want to say it to, and then saying it to myself and to them. I'm actually tearing up a little bit because, that letting go and still loving them, it's really, really hard. It's very powerful.
I'm glad and trust that there was a powerful thing there, and practice with it. You're a meditator. Bring that into your practice, and especially when something resonates like this, I have some work here. It's hard this whole thing that we're doing is hard. It's what, the Buddha said this goes against the stream because clinging is totally normal. Caring without clinging is really fucking radical because we just conflate the two. If I care about you, I'm attached to you. And this ability to say, I really do care about you. I love you. I really care about you, and I'm not going to cling to you. It's it's counter to the way that we're wired. So we are rewiring. So much of what Buddhism is teaching us to do is to orient differently, respond differently. Please.
It makes me think about the reason, according to Buddhism, that we're even reborn is because of our craving. So it's like life. So ultimately, we were trying to cut the cycle of birth and death. So we're trying to cut the craving.
Yeah.
But I always like it sort of fascinates me, the idea that our craving is what causes rebirth.
Yeah. And so then, of course, we're born into a biology that craves. And I'm a little bit more, I think a lot of our community, there's people in this room for sure that are total atheists when it comes to rebirth and that traditional Buddhist cycle of reincarnation. I'm a bit agnostic about it. Of course, what she's saying is, that there is this kind of traditional Buddhist, the only reason that we're reborn is because of craving and unfinished business from past incarnations that we bring in, like that last line. The only thing that we truly, our only true possession is our karma, because that's all that we take with us at death. Everything else you lose, but your karma, you get to keep that shit. And that's going to bring you back into this next cycle of existence. That's the traditional view. Some of you like that. Some of you hate it, don't believe it. Doesn't matter. Whether or not we've ever existed in the past or will ever exist in the future, what we know is right here, what's causing us suffering. The clinging, the craving that we experience here causes us suffering. So if you end it, if this intervention, if these kind of practices give an intervention between you and the causes of suffering, whether or not there's reincarnation, you still win right here in this lifetime. And then if there is reincarnation, bonus. Better lifetime next time, or getting off of the wheel of rebirth, great. And not many people in our community are motivated by trying to end the cycle of rebirth. But that is one of the traditional views. What do you think? If you want to stop, stop taking rebirth? All the people that are like, no, like I'm super attached. I want to continue to exist.
I like that you bring the 5 subjects in the talk before and also through the meditation I find for equanimity practice. I work with a shorthand to try and bring it into my daily life and into high repetition, which is just we age, we sicken, we die, we'll lose everything. And my version of the last one that I've been playing with is we bear the fruits of our actions. And I just like the idea that it's we bear them for better or for worse. Like you're carrying, we're literally carrying around this basket of fruit. And in my mind, I had this idea of the 2 opposing kinds of fruit. There's the diamond mango and the shit banana. And basically it's up to you. You could be snacking on the
What
diamond
kind of
mango,
fruit do you
or
want?
you could be nibbling on the shit banana. And it's every moment you get to choose.
Sounds like a good name for a band.
But just we age, we sicken, we die, we change basically.
Yeah.
And for me, kind of going over and over and over those, I feel kind of loosens them up.
It's helping with some equanimity. I like it too. I like these reflections for helping us be more at ease with the reality rather than denying it, ignoring it. Please.
I'm sitting in pain and being just sitting in it. I got shocked about it. In 5 o'clock this afternoon, like someone dear in the past and out of the blue. So I was sitting in the car, just sobbing my eyes out because I really feeling this terrible loss. And anyway, so it's good to be here. It's,
I'm glad you're here. Nice to see you, and I'm sorry for the loss. And how did the equanimity? Did you do some of the phrases for the friend that's died? It's hard when they're not embodied.
Yeah, and you know, he's not here, but he still is. I mean, a little, but because it's been so soon.
Yeah.
So, I'm still feeling a little bit of his presence. Mm-hmm. But at any rate, it's a process, and
my own experience with loss, in my meditation practice, often forgiveness becomes a part of my, depending on how they died. But I often end up doing some forgiveness for friends that die. And some appreciation too, you know, depending on what's happening in the relationship to the person who died, but some appreciation and always loving kindness. That's just sort of like, may you be at ease, depending on what you believe about death and afterlife and all of that stuff, but just that sort of like well-wishing. And maybe I forgive you if there's any resentment about it.
This soul is gentle, lovely. I mean, we all are, right? But he was schizophrenic as well, and he stepped out in the street and he got hit by a car. So it's that, and completely surprised. And anyway, you know, Otter was a very
Thank you. Time for one or two more. Last two, please.
Yes. My friend Rob told me to come here. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Did it resonate? Have you done some practice? Some meditation, or is it new?
Some I'm just shy.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here. Happy to connect afterwards if you want to. Rob Alexander? Yeah. Cool. Please.
I just wanted to ask, really like this tonight, the focus was on attachment now from people.
Yeah.
You say it translates also to, let's say, your non-attachment to the idea of who you are as career path, political ideals. It doesn't translate into, you say, all the areas of your life. You do the same practice.
Let me reflect on that for a moment. I mean, I think that the answer is yes. But I want to be cautious about putting a blanket.
More particular, I was thinking about your career, like, say you're super attached to this, something doesn't work out.
So I feel like with our ambitions, even with service, you know, even if it's not about career, livelihood, we have our ambitions, and we just have to check on what's my intention. Like, where am I coming from? What's my intention? That's the core. Buddhist is always like, what is my intention here? And sometimes we have to look at, my intention is for fame and money. You have to be honest and say, it's not the most wholesome intention, and there's a lot of craving for it or whatever it is. So we have to look at that. But then, of course, we set our intentions, and Jason said it, I thought, really well, which was, and then we have to let go of the outcome. we can't control, right? You can do all of the right things. You apply for the jobs and you do the internships or whatever it is to try to get to where you want to go. And there's some lack of ability, lack of power, with some influence. But you can't always create the perfect situation for yourself. Right? So you try. I think for sure you try. But for sure we set our goals and we try. Hopefully they're pretty wholesome goals and we try to do it. And then we have some acceptance about how that process unfolds or how quickly that process unfolds. And, it depends on what kind of career. There's some careers where you can just be like, I went to school, I got the degrees, I did the internship, I got the job. That's not the case if you're an artist or a musician or something where it's like, no, you don't just get to get a PhD in rock and roll and then become a rock star. That's not how it works. But I think, of course, equanimity. May I be at ease with life as it is, as I continue with some ambition to create this career, this life that I have some idea would be a good one to live, a good job to have. I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways, as I tend to do. There's nothing more disappointing than getting everything that you want. And then realizing it didn't work. And the reality is, it almost never works. Our ideas of what we want and how we'll be happy when we are there, and then you get there, and you're like, could be better.
You can try sometime.
Yeah. You can try to get what you want.
Exactly.
Uh-oh.
Thank you.
Don't sing along, got it. So we're out of time. I offer all of this. The Dharma is always offered in a spirit of for your own exploration, for your own reflection, not a set of beliefs to be dogmatic about, but experiences to digest and know for yourself. Does this lead to less suffering in my life? And if it does, then it's trustworthy and continue to practice that. And if it's not, set it aside. Keep seeking. May any merit that's been developed through our practice of the Buddha's Dharma be offered outward in all directions. May each one of us do what can be done to get free. And together may we create a positive change on this planet.